Good afternoon. The Committee on General Government Operation and Appropriation is now called to order. Today is Friday, May 19, 2023, and the time now is 2:02. In compliance with the open government law, the notice of this public hearing were posted on GovGuam Public Notice Portal KGTF PBS Channel 12 and disseminated via email to all senators and main media broadcasting outlets on May 3rd and May 11th. The agenda this afternoon is the budget on Department of Youth Affairs. This is consistent with Bill 26-37 COR, Committee on Rules by request of the I Magaʹhågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act making appropriation for the operation of the executive branch of the Government of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024, making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous administrative provisions. Reference to the Department of Youth Affairs. At this time, I ask the members of the panel, which are the representative of the Department of Youth Affairs, to please rise so that you be sworn in by the Sergeant-at-Arms.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Okay, Mr. Chair, under oath. You may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant-at-Arms. The general rules for this budget hearing. Please provide my legislative staff with any documents for photocopying and distribution. Panel members are asked to remain in the room for question or for additional testimony and may be desired by members of the committee. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda, which is the Department of Youth Affairs budget. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for this proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum will be restricted and removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. You will state your name and your title for the record. So every time you're going to speak, just identify who you are. We'll keep it simple, okay? I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me this afternoon. I have Senator Amanda Shelton and Senator Roy Kanata. And with that, I'd ask, let me see. The panel members are Ms. Brennan, the director, Mr. Michael Weekly, David Agustin, and Ms. Diego. That's a Puramzuki South, but I understand. Okay, so Ms. Brennan, if you can go ahead and give us the opening and please explain your budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator San Agustin, and members of the 37th Guam Legislature, Senator Amanda Shelton, our Oversight Chair, and Senator Roy Kanata. Thank you for the opportunity to humbly ask for your support for DYA's fiscal year 2024 budget requests. We do have a PowerPoint presentation. We could. Next slide, please. As described in Public Law 14-110, DYA's purpose is to improve the quality of life on Guam by the development and implementation of programs and services that promote positive youth development, decrease juvenile delinquency and status offenses, strengthen the family unit, protect the public, ensure that offenders are held accountable for their actions, and are provided with appropriate treatment and support. DYA does this through the operation of the Youth Correctional Facility for delinquent offenders, cottage homes for status offenders, and 3 community resource centers. Our positive youth development opportunities this year were the oratorical contests, Island Leadership Day, and the upcoming 2023 Governor's Summer Youth Employment Program. And we want to thank the legislature for being very, very supportive of these positive youth development opportunities, as well as many, many more that happen in the correctional facility and in the community resource centers and in our community. Next slide, please. Our budget requests for 2024, inclusive of the 22%, was $9,273,108. But in order to meet that ceiling, we made cuts to every object category as depicted in the next slide. Next slide, please. There you go. So if you look closely, you will see that our needs amounted to $9 million and our ceiling amounted to a variance. Our ceiling was 8.4, which indicated a variance of $793,173. $793,173. So in order to meet that ceiling, again, we made cuts to various object categories, from equipment to personnel, to building repair services and staff development needs, reduced food commodities, and cutting 2 10-ton package units, metal detectors, and a range hood fire suppressant system for the galley. We will currently use funds as they become available. The status of our capital outlay projects. Well, there is good news. We did finally receive authorization to proceed on all DOI-funded projects. These have been long awaited since 2019. As of March 25th, just this year, for the upgrade and fire alarm projects, we received authorization to proceed, as well as on November 30th last year for the design, build, admin, and maintenance supply depots. So as you can see, the very old buildings in the picture, we're currently still on fire watch, and these big projects are federally funded, and we do hope to see by next year the building go up, and by the end of this year, a fire alarm system. Okay, so DYA utilizes federal funding for many of the large projects, and we reserve local funding for our operational needs. And that's basically what our budget is. So the next slide depicts all our federal funding. And what you can see is that in 2019, when we first walked on board, we were receiving only a formula grant from the OJJDP for a total of $75,000. As you can see, we are now receiving $6,442,000. We've expended $1.3 million of those dollars, those federal funds, with an outstanding encumbrances of $41,777, which leaves a balance of $5 million. 3.1 is tied up in the DOI grants, 1.9 is Department of Justice and our American Rescue Plan funds. But it's noteworthy to mention that the ARP funding is tied to our capital improvement projects as well. Next slide, please. This next slide depends specifically the American Rescue Plan funds, because I know that that is a question that you ask all agencies. So total expended is total expended as of last week, May 8th, is $1,072,616. Sorry with the numbers. And the balance, the grand total of the balance is 1.6. Again, tied to capital improvement projects such as our administrative building and our supply depot. Next slide, please. So some of the successes of DYA, of course, is the authorization to proceed on the long-awaited capital improvement projects and upgrades. That does include a perimeter fence line as well as the recurring 2023 Governor's Summer Youth Employment Program. The newly appointed Juvenile Justice State Advisory Group, the SAG, is a requirement of OJJDP. We also look forward in the next coming year to open the Toto Gardens Resource Center. In addition, Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Community Mental Health Center site is still DYA, and so we actually have mental health practitioners on site at all times during the workday for any suicidal ideation, any behavioral or mental health needs that a client might have. We also are hugely proud of our automated case management system. This is the first automated data system ever. We are still in the training phase of that, and collecting the data is much easier, and we'll be better able to apply for grants, leveraging more federal funding. All youth service worker shifts, which are our equivalent of juvenile corrections officers, have received defensive tactics training, as well as balanced by trauma-informed training and juvenile mental health first aid, balancing advocacy with law enforcement, ensuring that the safety of our officers and our youth residents. Successes also include our collaborative work and training with other youth-serving partners on Guam. Next slide, please. Another question is the status of the merit bonus. I'm told that the payout should be today, as well as our 22% that went smoothly. The total amount for the warm bodies amounted to $355,962 and $89,892 for benefits. Next slide, please. Some of our challenges include addressing racial and ethnic disparities in juvenile corrections, the crossover youth that we see, or dual status youth, and youth with mental illnesses. Another challenge is youth and family and community engagement. Trying to engage our families, particularly with incarcerated youth, has been a recurring theme and a very difficult one to address. Like all law enforcement offices and agencies, we do have recruitment and retention issues with law enforcement personnel, social workers, and a program coordinator. Another challenge is succession planning. Usually, when somebody is ready to retire, we don't get much notice, and so it's very difficult to fill that void once the tenured employee leaves. Another challenge is leveraging additional federal funding for programs within the youth correctional facility and at the centers. Next slide, please. So this is our personnel situation currently. We were able to recruit 8 positions. We still have 17 vacancies that are in the process of recruiting. Within the last 4 months, DYA has lost 7 youth service workers. Again, those are the juvenile corrections officers. It does sometimes put us in a critical position, and so we actively work with the Department of Administration, their HR division, for the recruitment of these needed vacancies. Unfortunately, we do have difficulties with the applicants either declining the interview or declining the job upon selection. As an example, the youth service worker assistant position, of the 8 total vacancies, we were able to only hire 2 so far. However, we've requested for a supplemental listing 4 times due to the declinations. So currently what we do is we try to pick up temporary workers to supplement the staff shortage in order to keep our residents and our employees safe. Next slide, please. So this is just the full-time employee 3-year trend. You can see the difference is, but I think what you don't see clearly is that currently, even though we are funded for these positions, we only have 68 warm bodies. And when you really break that down to the law enforcement officers per shift, it really only equates to 8 per shift. And again, when you talk about the different dormitories, status offenders versus delinquent offenders, separating females from males, separating out the older offenders versus the youthful offenders, it really is difficult to provide the supervision that is required for best outcomes. So basically, our biggest challenge. Next slide, please. That concludes my report. my presentation. We are open for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Director. I'd like to also recognize Senator Brown has joined us, a member of the committee. I think the only thing I've noticed, which normally Senator Brown would ask, is the drug testing. I see it in the agency request of $2,400. How often have you done it?
We try to do it yearly, and we do it randomly so that no one knows.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and ask my colleagues. You know, your oversight chair is Senator Amanda Sheldon, but I'm going to ask Senator. She was asked to be last, so Senator Cananta, do you have any questions for them? I'm generally comfortable. I see that you're bringing in grants, and I'm going to honestly believe that the more people you get, the more your ability will grow to bring in more grants. Is there any way you can work with the grants where you can have them fund the positions so we don't have to use general fund? I mean, that's something you may want to bring.
Yes, we currently have one grant. It was a PRIA reallocation grant, and it hired a PRIA coordinator. So it's basically a full-time program coordinator to ensure that the Prison Rape Elimination Act requirements for juvenile facilities is fulfilled.
Okay, but I'm actually leaning towards, can you get more grants? I mean, there's a lot of grants out there, and I don't know, it may not be related to DYA per se, but it's related to your existence.
Well,
And that's what I'm hoping that you'll be able to pursue.
well, Mr. Chairman, I believe our team it is our desire to eventually apply for more grants, whether it is direct, effective with juvenile justice, or it can help youth in general, and eventually have those grants pay for positions that could help us with our funding locally and all that, and create a grants office, management office within DYA that is strictly responsible for make sure our grants, we apply for grants out there, we hire people, we can pay for positions and all that to help alleviate the funding source.
Okay, and the reason why I bring that up, and I'm going to use Department of Agriculture as a very good example. We discussed that, we heard them yesterday. For every dollar the general fund provides, they bring in $3 in federal grants. You know, we gave them $4 million, they brought in 24. And that's what I'm hoping that most of the agencies are able to get to that point. Because once you reach that point, a lot of the grants out there are actually reoccurring grants. You just keep asking to continue and continue. Because a lot of the grants that are out there, I know for sure, they're not just, it's just for 5 years or just for 3. You got to do it on your own. No. It's almost continuous. Because when you're dealing with corrections or helping the youth, that's something that the federal government is in full support. But we'll go ahead, Senator Cananta, if you have any questions, please feel free. Thank you.
I don't have much. Thank you for coming here today. Thank you for all your continuous hard work and your public service to each and every one of you, and to those who are not here with us today. Thank you for all your hard work in trying to curb the children that sometimes have challenges. With that being said, how is the capacity of the facility? I know the facility is quite dated, so have you guys been having challenges with housing the children or the youth? Can you turn on your mic?
So in answer to that question, the current capacity for the youth correctional facility is 101 beds. We currently, and I guess since 2015, we reduced the population from 80 to 100 to what it is today, 20 to 30 youth. So even though the facility is antiquated, we do have enough space. Our challenge really is keeping the tenured staff on, the experienced staff on. It is about retention and recruitment at this point.
Okay. With that being said, what are the challenges that you guys are having with the recruitment and retainment?
As I explained earlier, with regard to our personnel, even if we have an announcement and we have viable candidates, a lot of times they go through the whole process and we have to ask for a supplemental list because even upon selection, they decline the position. I guess, you know, the youth service worker is sometimes like a misnomer. They're not understanding that it is really juvenile corrections. and that they are in a facility where youth are held by court order. So I think that some of it is largely due with that fact.
Okay, well, if we need to make legislation, I guess your oversight chair is a very good oversight chair.
She's
I used to
excellent.
work for her, so I'm sure she has an open door to making those kind of suggestions. I know she's not my boss anymore, but you know, I just try to be a good employee all the time. But with that being said, I also have strides to digitize a lot of documents in the government's inventory. We've always had issues with vermin and pests, right? So I don't like when the government keeps retaining documents if we can destroy them and sanitize the agency as much as possible. I do know that certain documents need to be protected for X amount of years, but I don't think we need to keep it as a tradition to just keep hoarding documents. If we can get rid of them and donate it to agriculture, your neighbor, they're your good neighbor like State Farm. So just give them the paper so that they are shredding so that we can put it back into the environment. I think we can save money in that perspective as well. Digitizing everything, having a redundancy plan, and trying to alleviate the hoarding of those documents. So you can also have more space in your office. I don't like seeing offices that have bankers boxes or random boxes, copy boxes with papers in it when we can just get rid of them. I don't think that's a safe workspace. You're asking for a fire hazard and potentially someone's life being taken, regardless of fire. If it, knock on wood, if someone we're in a state of emergency and the person trying to vacate the premise and the boxes fall, I don't know what we're gonna do, right? So we want to alleviate that situation. So I'm very much trying to make more strides and trying to encourage all agencies to digitize all documents, have redundancy plans, and have a cleaner environment and office workspace so you're not congested.
So just to comment on that, our automated case management system, which was newly acquired in 2022, has really helped and cut down on the amount of paperwork that we have to retain.
Awesome. I bring it up, and I know you are making strides towards it, so that's very exciting news, and I appreciate that movement. But my office remains open to you, and you know where to find me if you don't find your oversight chair.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Have a good day.
Thank you, Senator Canada. Senator Brown, do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome to Department of Youth Affairs. You may have elaborated on this, but I just wanted to clarify, you're asking for a $2.3 million increase this fiscal year. What is the priority for those? Because so far, this is like the largest jump. We just started the budget hearing process, but it's one of the larger amounts I've seen so far besides the university, so I just wanted to get clarification on that.
So as you know, it is really tied to salaries and the 22% as well as specialty pays such as the correctional pay, hazardous pay. Specialty pays, overtime.
For how many of your employees would this cover? I mean, I understand the 22% would be everybody, but not everyone does overtime, right? I mean, you have your, what is the? You have 83 classified employees listed, or up to 80, I guess for this fiscal year now it's 80.
Up to 80. We currently
Okay.
have 68 warm bodies. And
Okay.
what has happened, I think, over the last few years, beginning with COVID, is we've had a lot of staff leave for various reasons. Some have gotten ill, and others just decided to retire after COVID. We just saw, I explained earlier, that since January of this year, 8 employees just either retired or resigned for various reasons. And what we've had to do because of staff shortages, we've had to use buffers, cover down, and overtime. Usually, if you look at our trend, our overtime is not as high. So this year it is. And with the correctional pay, the 25%, that just adds to the overtime costs as well.
I think we're finding with other GovGuam agencies, I don't know if, working for GovGuam is no longer in vogue because it used to be the main area of employment, and we're hearing some, as with you, there's some areas here where you're finding difficulty in recruiting employees. Is there any other type of outreach that your department may be looking at besides just the traditional, announcements through Department of Administration? Because, as you mentioned, you're doing youth corrections, and I'm sure in some areas that requires maybe a certain different type of training to address working with our youth. Is that something that you would be looking at to try to help facilitate getting qualified people to work in your department?
As I said earlier, we are working very closely with Shane Gata in particular regarding just the acquisition of more employees to help with the supervision. We also have utilized our social workers in areas where they can during the regular 8 to 5, just trying to utilize programming more than just supervision and surveillance, but being the advocates and balancing the law enforcement. But it is a 24/7 operation, and it is the youth correctional workers that are in the facility 24/7. And so we are coming up with, different areas that we can explore. But bottom line is we have an aggressive attorney general, and there are more kids that are coming in. And so we do have different dormitories, and they all need to be staffed and manned. And so what we're doing is we're asking shifts, and so that we don't overburden those individuals that just get off the shift. We're asking other shifts to come in, pull a few hours of overtime just to offset and help the different shifts that are on duty.
I appreciate that. I was just asking, is there anything else? I understand the whole DOA process and the concerns and limitations, but is there anything else your department's looking at? I mean, some other department and agencies go and do community outreach, or they say we have a job fair, or whatever the case may be, just outside of the traditional DOA process to see if you can help facilitate interest of, applicants that would be interested in working. Some may not know what the qualifications are, or what the work entails, and maybe it might be an area they might find of interest, but I think if we just, wait for DOA to process and see who comes up, you're probably still going to be in the same situation where you just don't have enough people applying that are qualified for the respective positions that you need.
Well, again, it was just this year since the beginning of this year, where we just, for some odd reason, it was the biggest kind of exodus that we've experienced. And prior to that, we weren't losing as many, like, let's say, for example, we weren't losing as many as DOC or GPD was losing. And so this is kind of an odd... Unusual for the youth service worker. I mean, if you look at corrections, DOC even wants to know when there's openings. And it's just a matter of getting on the list when the list is, and the list stays active for a year. And so... I am working closely. We are working closely with Shane, and what we try to do is we pick up temporary appointments to help with the staff shortages. And we also tell them, please apply, so that when the actual recruitment classification comes up, you're eligible and you're on the list.
Well, at least I see you don't have a lot of unclassified, which is rare so far in the departments we've looked at. You have 3 listed. Who are the unclassified right now in DYA? And I understand the director, the deputy, and that's traditionally, like I said, unless you have a board, you may be a board secretary, so I'm sorry, I don't know what position you hold.
I am the private secretary.
Okay, so you're the private secretary.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then that would be allowable. That actually fits. With regards to you mentioned how many on average? I know it fluctuates, and you mentioned the Attorney General is aggressive, and those numbers may have increased for you recently. But on average, how many youth do you actually house on a regular basis at DYA? And what facilities do you have? Is it just your main facility up in Manilo, or do you have other satellite locations? Years ago, DYA used to have the cottage homes in Talafofa. I don't know if you still have or operate that.
So we have several different dormitories. So there is...
Thank you.
There's one dormitory that is set aside for cottage homes, and those are for our status offenders, and that is a staff-secure facility, a dormitory that was emptied out by juvenile justice reform efforts. And so that remains staff secure. The youth correctional facility has a male dormitory, a female dormitory, and a continuing jurisdiction dormitory. And that's for our youth that age out while their juvenile offenses have not yet been adjudicated. And so, I mean, a lot of the community is often surprised that sometimes we have an 18-year-old. And so we have to separate them. Currently, we have approximately 30 youth, and of the 30 youth, we have, I believe, 7 in cottage homes, which are status offenders.
Okay.
males and females, and we have the age variance is, we have a 9-year-old, and we have 2 18-year-olds. So it's the age difference.
So that's the range of children you have now. Also, I wanted to ask, is there any other type of evaluation that you have with individuals? Because this is obviously becoming an issue of concern for me and some of our other colleagues. Is there what type of review is taking place besides just the regular hiring process? Are there any additional reviews behind, do I have a police clearance to determine the suitability of these individuals that work directly with children? Because we're finding that's an issue, unfortunately. I mean, you're there to try to help young people, and yet some people, for whatever reason, are there for ulterior reasons, and they're not there. They're there to harm children. So I'm looking at whether or not we should have additional requirements for individuals that work with children and vulnerable, including, our elderly, beyond just simply, and I know that the public health, as a result of the issues that have been raised with the foster children, now we found recently 2 that have been, again, alleged to have been harmed in the custody of a foster parent. Whether or not there's additional levels of review we need to put in place for those working with the vulnerable members of our community. So I just wanted to ask for DYA, is there anything beyond just the regular, background check? And to what degree is that? Is that just simply have a court clearance? I have my clean police record. Is that the extent, or is there something else in your field that you require to make sure that these individuals are suitable to work with children?
So in addition to the background checks and the whole DOA process and the interview process, we also are mandated by the Prison Rape Elimination Act to conduct staff checks, not only at time of hiring, but also we are required to call former employees. We are required to conduct background checks routinely every 5 years.
To what degree do those background checks go? I mean, are they federal? I mean, to what level?
So we have access to the NCIC, which is the FBI computer, which, as well as the VCCH, the Virtual Criminal Computerized History, and I believe that is operated through and with the permission of the Superior Court of Guam. So both the FBI and local checks. Okay.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, our office might contact you just to formalize that because, like I said, we may be looking at, and making it consistent. You could be working with the elderly or working with children, but if they're vulnerable members of our community, the government has some involvement in. It's unfortunate that we're getting to a point that we have to maybe take things down another level. That, to me, also includes those that are in the school system because we've had issues recently, and they've been there over the years, of children that are being, I don't know how it happens in a school day, but are sexually harmed when we're, expecting them to be in a safe place. And, we're assuming that the individuals we've hired are responsible and they're not going to do anything to harm children, but then we end up finding out, unfortunately, that that's not the case.
I do appreciate you asking that question because it isn't often that people are interested on what kind of checks that we do for our employees. And we do deal with a very, very vulnerable population. Most of our kids are duly involved with Child Protective Services, the child welfare system. And so I do appreciate that question and know that we do everything that we can possibly do with regard to our PREA mandate to ensure that those people that are working with kids are fit to work with kids.
I saw in your presentation, one of the areas that you're addressing, you indicate here is racial and ethnic disparities in juvenile corrections. Can you elaborate further on that to try to give me and anyone else in the public an understanding? It's the first time I've kind of seen that listed, so I'm curious, what is really the issue here that you're looking at and trying to address?
So in any community, you want to look at how you respond to people of all races and ethnicities. And if you see that there is a negative impact on one specific population, you want to be able to address that and know how to respond more effectively when they do intersect with the correctional system. And so doing focus groups, trying to have a diverse workforce, understanding that there is implicit bias in all that we do, and can have an impact on our responsivity to youth that intersect. So, I mean, at every juncture, you want to look at it at every juncture, from the point of them being taken into custody through what they go through in court and to who ends up at, kind of the last ditch and of the of the juvenile justice system, which is corrections.
Do you think there's unfairness or bias on how certain ethnic groups might be treated, or?
I think that there needs to be more of a discussion on who ends up there and the length of stay and why that is.
I see. That's very interesting, because that would be something further to look at. I mean, you know, we think of the fact that you take care of these 30-plus youth, but can you just quickly elaborate on what else? Because if we're going to do the ratio of 8 million to 30 youth on average, it's a high price tag. So can you elaborate on what else, what other proactive engagements DYA has with our youth to hopefully prevent them from becoming clients that are housed at your facility?
Certainly. So somewhere along the line, DYA kind of got mistaken for just the youth correctional facility. Our larger mandate really is positive youth development as a critical component in making sure that all youth have access to the supports and the opportunities that they need to thrive, to grow into productive adults. So what we do with them while they intersect with the correctional system, it's more important that on the prevention side. So we have 3 resource centers, 3 youth resource centers, and they're operated by community program aides and social workers. And they provide mentoring to latchkey kids, opportunities, access to virtual learning centers after the school day, free summer camps. We actively engage with the community and families there. And if the social workers note any kind of issues, mental health needs, family dysfunction, they are referred so that we don't see them at our youth correctional facility. And I think that is more important work. And sorry, not to discredit our superintendent and all the youth correctional officers who really engage with these, you know, high-risk youth every day. But I do believe that our youth correctional facility really does not need to have 30 kids. It is often a place for throwaway kids where if they have mental health issues and they cannot be successfully managed in the community, they end up at DYA. And our officers have to understand what kind of medication they're taking, what kind of behavior they're exhibiting, and what can be attributed to the medication, and then get through all of that gunk and still have to, you know, teach them basic hygiene, basic life skills. And so the real important work of DYA, our mission really is to provide those opportunities so that all youth can thrive, to make sure that if there is racial and ethnic disparities, that all kids have access.
Do you guys track these children for any period of time after they're no longer in your custody?
So we have applied for a reentry grant. It's the only way we could have jurisdiction to track them. And we have not received the award yet.
Yeah,
so
I think it
we
just,
are hopeful.
You know, I certainly appreciate the fact you've applied. I hope at some point we're able to get it, not in a negative way, but just to see, you know, what is the success of these children? Because, you know, you always heard that old comment, oh, they're just going to graduate to DOC. You know, some people have that perspective that some of these children are just, you know, whatever their circumstance, that they're not going to go on from their adversity to have a better life, that they're just going to graduate down the street. And you've heard that over the years. We heard that growing up, that if you ended up at DYA, you're going to end up at DOC. And it was a very negative connotation, but I think if there's some way that there's still an awareness to be able to, you know, touch base with these children just to see how they're doing, and is there something we need to do more or better in that transition, because they're not getting, for whatever reason, they're coming from a circumstance that is not favorable. Could be drugs, could be a whole host of other reasons. And it's how do we provide that support system that doesn't harm them by being institutionalized, so to speak, because it's not a normal home that you're coming home to in the same way. And how do we give them a better start in life from that adversity so that they can move on to better opportunities? Because it's there, it's just, you know, having them in the mindset and that sense of self-esteem and will to provide a better pathway for them. But right now, you're telling me you currently have no way of tracking their success at all, or where they may be once they're no longer in your custody.
We do track recidivism rates, and so we know who comes back to us, but we don't know what kind of supports are there and what they lose when they leave. And so reentry is a critical component in addressing the revolving door and the gateway to DOC.
I just have a couple other questions, Mr. Chair. I know you were able to assist not too long ago with public health because of the backlog that they had with regards to children in their system. Has that Are you okay with that now? Has that process been fully completed? Is public health now solely responsible for the children or the foster children that are in their care in terms of referrals and things of that nature?
When our community resource centers reopened, we did leave. We did take the social workers out. We still remain open to assisting them with guidance on particular difficult cases. And we were, when they had the issue with the background checks, because we have the NCIC and we do assist them with those checks.
So if something happened, you guys could still be there to assist, to fill in just in case if they get overwhelmed again with, I mean, you know, we understand with the pandemic, I mean, that just, and the growing drug problem has helped, you know, unfortunately bring those numbers probably to levels we've not seen before, just in terms of the sheer volume.
So again, like I said, over half of our cases are residents at the Department of Youth Affairs, are dual status youth, meaning they are also child welfare, child protective service cases. And so I think that that partnership will continue and remain. But in terms of actual warm bodies at CPS, we do have 2 on a supervisory level that go to CPS at least twice a week to assist with case management, referrals, and the like. Unfortunately, we just, our bodies, our warm bodies did have to go back to our resource centers.
And with children, if they're still underage and they're able to go back home, might not have been a beneficial situation as to why, you know, they came into your care, but do your social workers go back, I mean, if they're still underage, to check on the status? Because I'm a little concerned, and even though public health tells me that, you know, these children are being visited on a regular basis, it's not the feedback I'm getting from foster parents, and I'm really gauging that that's not the case, and that concerns me, because especially in the cases of abuse that have come to surface, you know, it's like, how do things, especially if they've existed over a period of time, it's like, how did that happen over that long period of time if these children were regularly checked? And then also, I mean, even the simplest thing, if I understand with younger children, it may be difficult for them to relay that they're not in a safe situation. And you know, I leave those of you that have the expertise in social work, you know, that can see the signs to know, wait a minute, there's something not right, you know, with this child. Are they in a safe environment? Are they being properly taken care of? Are they being harmed? So with your children that may have been at your facility for whatever reason and they're able to go back home, do your social workers check on them, their progress for a certain period of time to make sure they're reintegrating back in the family, or whatever the circumstance that, you know, as to why the children were in your care to begin with, you know, to make sure maybe it might have been addressed or whatever, wonderful. But do you have a way of going back and just checking on those children to make sure that their integration back into whatever family life they have is safe and normal and that they're productive in that environment?
So while they are remanded to the Department of Youth Affairs, our correctional facility, or our cottage homes, they continue to go to court with the child protective service worker. Placement is usually a multidisciplinary team, and usually the judge will be the one to set when and where and who's eligible. And so, yeah, there are home studies, there are, our social workers even engage in looking for alternative placement.
Okay, if there's a need to do that. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm sure we could go on for another hour or so, but I know the Oversight Chair has questions as well, but I appreciate you taking the time to respond to my questions. And the Chairman already asked about the drug testing, so please, particularly in your designated positions, I mean, we just want to see consistency, because when we had the Guam Police Department come before us, I mean, even the chief himself said he probably wasn't tested since he first signed up, and that's a long stretch. And with our growing drug problem on Guam, I mean, I need that as a deterrent. I mean, when I got bus drivers and everybody else who's high on methamphetamines, you know, that are transporting our children, I mean, we have a concern with that. And we certainly don't want to see individuals that are employed in the government of Guam that are working with our children not in a clear state of mind. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, too.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Shelton, do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
Thank you very much. Thank you, DYA team, for being here today, for your presentation, for all of the questions that you answered today. You've covered much of what we wanted to discuss already, so thank you very much. I wanted to ask if there is any eligibility for our ARPA money to be used for contractual service. I don't know if I missed that in the presentation, but is there any of those resources that can be used for our specific contractual services at the department?
So when we did our plan, the American Rescue Plan, the fund plan, we basically asked for client expansion services, and the operational requirement costs, shortfalls were approved, and pandemic hazardous pay. And again, a lot of the ARP money that is unexpended is tied to our capital improvement project, our admin and supply depot buildings, which will finally, we finally received authorization to proceed and hope to have the building by September of 2024. So the furniture and that would have paid for that. But no, we did not ask for any contractual services.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. And I just wanted to ask specifically about the utility request that you have to pay for power. It seems like a large increase from 200 is requesting, you're requesting for $208,000, which seems like over $100,000 more than the previous fiscal year. Did something specific happen? And right now, with your appropriation of $37,000 for power, are we going to be able to make it to the end of the fiscal year, 2023?
You know, what happened was our resource centers were closed during
Yes.
most of, and so we had brought in our social workers to help with child protective services, so they weren't utilizing those buildings. And then power is just outrageous, and so I guess just the plan to fund that is what we requested.
Okay.
So are you talking about shortfalls for this fiscal year?
Yes, so we
Okay.
appropriated in the last fiscal year budget for 2023, $37,000. And now that resource centers are open and you're at full use of everything, is that going to carry you through to the end for the next several months?
So again, we lost 8 staff, and so that attrition alone amounts to $530,000. So I do believe we'll be able to pay for our utilities and our power.
Okay, just wanted to double check because it seemed like a large jump. I didn't want to leave you guys hanging for the rest of 2023.
Well,
Good
that is also in
to know.
anticipation of us opening a 4th center in Toto.
Okay.
Additionally, I just want to say that we always come here every year asking for basically what we get is status quo. But you have always, the legislature has always been so gracious to allow for carryover funds, understanding that recruitment is difficult, and just filling our vacancies, even though they're much needed, we simply don't have a real big pot to choose from. And so the carryover has sustained us, and we are hopeful again, and we do ask that you allow us to carry over whatever funds we do not use this year.
I know the OFB chairman is not a fan of carryovers, but when I have asked in the past for the Department of Youth Affairs, he cannot say no because it's for the youth. And for such a small agency doing such an important job, I hope that he will once again support that type of inclusion in the budget bill. He tells me it's not good accounting practice, but sometimes necessary, unfortunately. I wanted to give you all a chance. I know we just received notice to our offices that the application period for their summer youth employment program is up. You'll be very busy over the is open now. You'll be very busy over the next couple of months. We look forward to having some young people in our offices. I wanted to give you an opportunity to plug some of that right now for the public.
So this, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So the Governor's Summer Youth Employment Program will begin.
State your name so everybody knows.
I'm sorry. My name is Michael Weekly, and I'm the Deputy Director for DYA. So the Governor, currently, the application process for the Governor's Summer Youth Employment Program is currently available on our website. You can download it. It's a fillable application. Applications will be accepted in our intake process on Saturday, May 27th from 10 to 6 at the Guam Premier Outlet. The Summer Youth Employment Program will take place from June 19th through July 28th. Our youths between the ages of 14 to 17 will have the opportunity to work throughout the entire government of Guam, gaining some meaningful work experience at the rate of $300 per week for a total of 6 weeks. And so we encourage all of GovGuam. We've invited the judiciary to take part. They are happily to join us. The Mayor's Council, I just sent reminder emails to every senator again this morning, just to, but some of you guys did respond already, and we do appreciate that. As well as all line agencies, the University of Guam, Guam Community College, and all autonomous agencies as well. So we wanted to try to gain as much positions within GovGuam as possible.
Yes, thank you very much. It was really a breath of fresh air to have so many young people around us here in the legislature and in all the agencies last summer, and they had a great experience. We had some terrific feedback from these young people who would have otherwise never had the chance to be exposed to work in the government, and so hopefully this helps to inspire many of them to want to serve in some capacity in the government of Guam. So we look forward to that, and we hope our young people are listening, or their parents or their grandparents are listening right now to encourage them to apply. Thank you again to the Department of Youth Affairs for all of the information. We look forward to supporting your budget. And Mr. Chair, I know you'll back it all the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. What rollover, how much you looking at anyway, carryover? 100,000?
I believe the amount.
I'm just curious because there's an increase of almost 2 million.
Yeah.
So if you had a clean slate and everything was covered in the budget, you don't need a rollover. That's what because you increase.
Well, to meet the budget ceiling, we did have to make cuts to the different object categories. So if there is any carryover, I believe that just from personnel alone, the attrition is 530.
Just send the email,
Okay.
the official, and why, so we can understand. Okay?
will.
And we'll figure out something.
All right.
Because we're trying to avoid the carryover because it doesn't. You carry over and then you're not really going to use last year's money. You're using current. Okay, so I'd rather that we figure out a way how to give you in your budget so that you start the year right, and if you need to pay something, you're current. Because when you really do the math, who goes back on let me use my money yesterday? It's the same pot of money. So we got to move forward, and if we focus on forward, we'll figure out something. But send us an official email.
I will.
Okay. Other than that, I was going to ask about the DYA event, but never mind. And there's no one here to testify against or for your budget. I want to thank everyone for attending this hearing and for providing feedback and suggestion. And the Department of Youth Affairs budget hearing is now adjourned. It is now. An item I'm concerned about when they brought about the power, because I brought it up with everybody. Are you going to try to figure out a way how to put solar in your building, solar panels? I mean, if you fill it up with solar, you don't need to ask us for money. It pays itself. Something to please look at. Just look at it, consider it, plug it in. You could, because if the budget is passed and you get 200-some thousand, and once we give you the money, you put the solar in there and you save money. You use the funds. And hopefully you don't ask me for carryover next year.
Sorry, that is part of the plan for the new buildings, but even our older buildings, we're trying to get with Bureau of Energy.
Yes, work with GPA because they'll help you out. Okay, and then another one is that you know how the Department of Correction has their clients helping out on grass cutting. Does DYA get involved in that?
Yes.
They do.
We do island beautification.
Is there any way you can be assigned to a specific school so we can get them clean? I mean, I'm just thought I'd ask that if anybody's asked you guys.
So the mayor's offices normally utilize us, plus our superintendent will do special projects right before school starts. But definitely, we are an agency that even Homeland was using us at one point.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I
Yes.
make a shout out so that we can take advantage of that. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Anyway, now to just end it, the Department of Youth Affairs budget hearing is now adjourned. It is now 2:56. Please be safe. It's Friday and enjoy your weekend. Take care. Thank you.